Every 20 years in the United States, we have a war on poverty. You know why? Because we lose them every time. Poverty doesn't go away. Every 20 years, some great person, Michael Harrington in 1960, and whoever the next ones are. We can't solve our racial problem. We can't solve our poverty. We can't solve our inequality. The system itself. And Marx answers the question, well, what is it about the system? And now I'm going to give you a very short, basic lesson. Bear with me. I think you'll see it's worthwhile. Here's Marx's analysis. Whenever a human being in a capitalist system goes and looks for a job, something I'm assuming all of you or most of you have had to do, and you sit down with your prospective employer, and you discuss what you're going to be asked to do and what time you have to show up and all that. And then you get to that dicey moment when how much am I going to get paid? And let's just say for the sake of an argument, you're going to get paid $20 an hour. That's what you agree to. Here's something Marx then points out, which you know, but you don't want to face. There are a lot of things we all know that we don't want to face. I hope you already know that. It'll save you a lot of grief if you're aware and expect to discover it about yourself. Here we go. The employer will never pay you $20 an hour unless the following sentence is true. During each hour that you work for that employer, for which he pays you 20 bucks, you have to add more than 20 bucks worth of stuff to whatever that employer makes and sells. Because if that weren't the case, there'd be no profit in it for him. Now let me drive home what Marx means here. For those of you who've looked in the mirror on a good day and said to yourself, I'll never work for anybody who doesn't pay me what I'm worth, you don't understand the system. You're never going to get that, and you never did. That's not how this system works. You've got to face that. You get paid enough to reproduce yourself as an employee, while the employer grabs into his hands all of those extras, those profits that your labor, that extra you produce over and above what he pays you, that's what he gets. That's his profit. That's why he's in business. He gets richer. You don't. The rest is fairy tales. And they're not nice fairies. Marx is explaining something. And it rings true once you start thinking about it. Here's how it rings true. And we'll end with this. Think about slavery. We all can think about it. We know it, especially in this country, because we had a period of time with slavery. In slavery, the slave does all the work. And whatever the slave produces is entirely taken and owned by the master. But the master gives back to the slave some, because otherwise the slave wouldn't survive till tomorrow when he wants it all done tomorrow again. So if you think about it, the slave produces, the master gives back to the slave a portion of what the slave produces, but he keeps for himself the other part, what Marx called the surplus, what the slave produces over and above what he gets back. Now let's go to feudalism, lord and serf. For those of you who don't know, the serf worked 3 days of the week on the land that the lord gave him, and he kept whatever he produced there. And the other 3 days of the week, he worked on the land of the Lord, who kept whatever he produced there. And on the seventh day, as you all know, he went to church to learn why this is a good way to live. Very important to church. The 3 days at the end of the week, well, those are surplus. That's when the serf produces more that he gets. The capitalists thought they were overcoming slavery by getting rid of the ownership of one person by another. And they thought they were getting rid of feudalism by abolishing serfdom. What they didn't understand, The sad news I got to give you is that we didn't get rid of the dichotomy of a small number of people, masters, controlling the slaves to get the surplus, or a small number of lords controlling the serfs to get the surplus. We didn't get rid of it. We just changed the form. We have employers who pull the surplus out of employees. That's why we didn't get the liberty, fraternity, equality, and democracy. The change we made wasn't enough, was it? And it lasted for a while. So did slavery and feudalism. Good 300 years, not a bad run. Is done. It can't. The contradictions are mounting. Solving one problem produces immediately another one, and you don't know how to go. And the mass of people are disgusted with the old leaders because they're no good at it, rightly. So they try a new one. You can see where that's going to go. Everywhere that's happening, not just the United States. The British working class, which suffered more after 2008 than ours did. They voted, they imagined in their wild thinking that if they cut themselves off from Europe, it will solve their problem. That's crazy. England will now become what it once was, a cold, wet, offshore island of Europe. That's not going to solve the problems of the British working class. They just struck out to do something because they were so angry. The Italians just voted in a crazy government. What are they doing? They're just angry. They're angry. And the Americans were angry too, and they voted for Mr. Trump because he was different. He shoots his mouth off. He's this, he's that. Whatever you think. He's different. He made a point of being more different than any of those others that he was up there with. If you had to choose between another Bush or another Clinton, you go for Mr. Trump, because at least he's not that. What he is, that's another matter. But he's a symptom, like Brexit, like the Italian government, and so on.